Well, it took 2 months, but I've finally made it to Toy Story 3. This is the third Toy Story movie. It takes place years after Toy Story 2, in which Andy is 17 years old and he's about to go to college. Only a few toys remain in his room, and they're Woody, Buzz Lightyear, Rex, Ham, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, Jessie, Bullseye, Slinky, and the 3 little green men. So Andy decides to take Woody with him to college, while he puts Buzz and the other toys in a garbage bag, planning to put them in the attic. But unfortunately, there's a bit of a mix-up. Andy's mom puts the toys on the curb thinking that they're trash, so the toys feel like Andy abandoned them. And as Woody tries to convince everyone that Andy was putting them in the attic, they end up in a box where they find themselves at Sunnyside Daycare, where they possibly could be played with other kids. But this really bright and colorful daycare may seem cheerful on the outside, but it turns out that there are sinister things happening on the inside. Now, Toy Story 3 is like Jurassic World for me, where I heard about this movie sometime after the second one came out, although instead of it being official word of mouth, the idea of a Toy Story 3 actually got planted in my head from a blooper in Toy Story 2, where Prospector's talking to 2 Barbie girls, and he's like, you know, I'm sure I could get you a part in Toy Story 3. And being a stupid 8-year-old, I was like, Toy Story 3? Toy Story 3 is coming? I can't wait! And then years went by, gave up on the idea of a Toy Story 3, especially when I went into my anti-animation phase. But around the time I went out of my anti-animation phase thanks to WALL-E, news of a Toy Story 3 was finally being tossed around, and sure enough, in 2010, Toy Story 3 comes out. It's definitely worth the wait, both creatively and, like, personally for me. But let's get into the great stuff. Obviously, it's a Pixar movie. They have done the rarest thing and made a trilogy of movies where all of them are not just good, they're all excellent. Because when they do Toy Story 3, some people thought, all right, they're probably going to sell out, where they just make this to make some new toys so people can buy toys of these characters. But no, they really do care. The script is very tight. All the characters are great once again, with all but one of the voice actors returning. You got Tom Hanks as Woody, Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, Joan Cusack as Jessie, Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, Wallace Shaw as Rex, John Ratzenberger as Ham. The only one who doesn't come back is Jim Verney, who unfortunately passed away soon after the second movie. But Blake Clark replaces Jim Verney as Slinky, and he does a pitch-perfect job. You would not be able to tell the difference. Like, if somebody watched this movie without knowing any of the behind-the-scenes stuff in between movies, and you told him that Jim Varney voiced Slinky in Toy Story 3, I'd bet you they'd actually believe that until they go to Wikipedia and look it up. And it still has the charm of the first 2 Toy Story movies. It's got all the jokes that hit perfectly. As I mentioned, the characters are memorable, but it also is the darkest of the 3 movies. I mean, by the time you get to the 3rd movie, you gotta make things a lot more impactful. There have to be more emotions at stake, and this movie, I think, does it flawlessly, without losing the spirit that those first 2 movies had. And all of the emotion in this movie comes from nostalgia. I mean, granted, it does have a great story, great characters, and a great script to back it up, but what I mean by nostalgia is Toy Story 2 came out in 1999. I was 8 years old. This movie comes out in 2010 when I'm 19 years old. And a lot of the emotions me and a lot of other 90s kids got was just seeing these characters with an adult mindset and really, like, remembering how great they are, and just seeing them go through hell is almost torturous for us. Let's get back to that a little later, but outside of it being the darkest one, it's also really, really funny. Like, one of the things I really loved is the opening. I thought the opening was really creative, well done, funny. The opening of the scene takes place in the Wild West with all the toys, like, fighting each other, and Mr. Potato Head is One-Eyed Bart, and Ham is Mr. Evil Dr. Porkchop, and it's all within young Andy's mind. Like, whenever we play with toys, like, when I was younger and I played with Godzilla toys, like, I just could not imagine toys in my mind. All that was going on in my mind was these were actual Godzilla monsters that were fighting each other, and I love how Toy Story 3 shows that idea. Another new thing that it does is introduce a lot of new characters that are quite memorable, I gotta say. You got Lotso, who's voiced by Ned Beatty. He's really good in the movie. You got a bunch of new toys owned by this girl named Molly. They're really memorable. And probably the most memorable of all is Ken, voiced by Michael Keaton. He's the funniest of all the new characters, and like there's this whole subtext where all the other toys in the daycare, all the other tough toys, like accuse him of being gay because he's really into clothes. Potato Head at one point calls him an accessory and a purse with legs. I mean, it's really funny. No disrespect at all, but like it shows that Pixar still has some edge. And speaking of edge, let's get back to the emotional parts of the movie, especially the ending. Now, this will be spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen Toy Story 3, then what are you doing? But anyway, the ending has two big moments that really pull your heartstrings, especially if you saw the first Toy Story movie as a kid. There's a point where Andy's toys are at a garbage dump, and they're just going through hell, and they find themselves in a furnace. And they all kind of accept their fate. They all hold hands, just look at each other, knowing that the end is near and they have to accept it. And when I saw this in the theater, I was like, this is Pixar. They're not going to have that happen. But then that scene kept getting more intense where I was like, holy shit, they're going to do it. I'm not ready for them to do this. Why are you doing this to me? But obviously the toys are saved in a very great way, I think. It's a great way to bring something that happens in Toy Story 2 around full circle. And then the very end of the movie, when Andy has to say goodbye to his toys and he gives them to Molly, it's a scene that could easily have been schlocky, could have been very sappy, corny, if done wrong, but Pixar nails it. They knew how to pull your heartstrings at the very end, leave you sad but also very happy, and it is just a perfect movie. There are two small moments that irritated me, something that is a little below Pixar standards, but again, they're nitpicks. One of them is there's a clothing montage set to La Frique, where Ken is trying on clothes in front of Barbie. And it is corny, but at the same time, that clothing montage is there because it later serves a purpose in the plot. There's a reason why that clothing montage is there. It could have been done a little better, but in the end, it ultimately is important, so I can give that a pass, unlike some other comedy movies out there where they just have a clothing montage to kill time. And the other issue I have is when Ken and Barbie meet. It's that cheesy romantic comedy routine where there's pop music playing in the background, and then it does the record needle scratch. Yeah, that one. When Barbie says, "Nice ascot," and it's just very awkward, but at the same time, it's a tiny, tiny part of the movie, and as soon as that's over, you're immediately pulled back into the story, and you're invested in what's going on. So, Toy Story 3, let me say this. Toy Story 3 is a movie that is one of the perfect endings to any trilogy I've ever seen. There are only a few times out there where I will watch a movie, 3 movies in a row without stopping. They are the Star Wars trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy, and the Toy Story trilogy. All 3 of these movies are so well done, so well made, and I'm happy that Pixar took as long as they did to bring us Toy Story 3, especially for someone in my generation. Because around the time Andy's going to college in this movie, I was heading off to college. And basically, I grew up with Andy, kind of. I was like, okay, maybe I was a little younger when Toy Story 1 came out, but I was around Andy's age when the second movie came out. And I was 2 years older than him in this movie, but Regardless, we kind of went through the same thing. So these movies pretty much came out at the perfect time for me. And I feel sorry for any future generation who won't be able to experience what me and several other kids from the 90s experienced with these movies. And it's just a perfect movie. And with the time Toy Story 3 came out, it was a very appropriate time for me. And to Pixar, I have to say, thank you. Thank you for having the Toy Story movies be so special to me and to many other kids from the 90s. If my rating isn't obvious, it's get off your ass and go see it right now. Hell, watch all 3 movies in a row. Don't stop. Just take a day, take an afternoon off, watch all 3 movies in a row, and you will have seen one of the best trilogies ever made. And that's my review for Toy Story 3. Leave a comment and tell me what you thought of the movie if you've seen it. What did you think? Like, subscribe, share me with your friends. And this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.